back to another episode of Girl with God. And this week we will be talking about checking yourself. The title of this week's sermon is Check Yourself. So this was just something that I realized recently is just something that I have to learn. I have to check myself and what my heart posture looks like. And I also have to check myself spiritually. And so checking myself spiritually is checking the things that I'm about to do. Whether it's what I'm going to say or what I'm about to do in a certain situation. Like, I had to check myself spiritually before approaching a family member or approaching a friend or approaching my boss at work. You have to check yourself. You have to say, okay, God, is this for me? Are the things that I'm saying or the things that I plan on saying for me? Because a lot of the times we go into it worldly. We go into it with our human emotions. We go into it with our bare emotions. And that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go in there with our spiritual selves, which is directly from God, which comes out more poised and more proper. And so a lot of the times I realize I have to check myself. Not only that, with whatever journey I'm about to take. And one of the earlier talks, I talked about my journey and the things that I did and how that looked like, and I compared it a lot to the story of Ruth and Naomi. And I told myself, even in that situation, I had to check myself spiritually. Okay, is the situation, the things that I'm about to do, aligning with God's will? Is it the same thing? And sometimes it takes a lot of praying, it takes a lot of tears, it takes a lot of crying. Trust me, lots of tears. I'm a very emotional person, so it takes a lot of crying, it takes a lot of journaling, praying, laughing through it, talking to people, having that emotional support. So check yourself was just something for me that was just like, yeah, we got to talk about it on Girl with God. What does it look like checking yourself spiritually? And what does it mean to check yourself spiritually? And God tells you all about that spiritual life in here. So in 1 Corinthians 2:14 is what I'm going to be starting off. I'm going to be reading from the CBS version. It says, but the person without the Spirit does not receive what comes from God's Spirit because it's foolishness to him. I'm just going to pause right there before I continue to read. It says the person without the Spirit. So it's talking about a person, for example, that doesn't know God, doesn't know about his miracles, wonders, his love, his grace, his mercy. Right? Does not receive what comes from God's Spirit. They don't receive what comes from God's Spirit because their heart posture and their heart and their ears and their mind is not open to hear what comes from God. Okay, let's continue. Because it's foolishness to them. So to them, it's stupid. It's like, okay, I don't understand what you're saying. You sound dumb. Like, what are you talking about? He is not able to understand it since it's evaluated spiritually. So if we think about this, a lot of the times when you're going back and forth with someone, or you're arguing with someone, and they're just not understanding your point of view, most likely they're never going to understand your point of view because they're not there to care for what you're trying to say. Because they don't have that spirit within them, as God would put it. But with the one without the Spirit, so going back and forth with them, doing these things back and forth with them, it's foolish to God. Like, why are you talking to this person? Why am I having this conversation? Why are you putting yourself in a certain predicament, in a certain situation that is not meant for you? If my spirit isn't in there, if that's not my hand in it, you shouldn't be doing it. Whether it's getting a new job, whether it's purchasing a new car, if God's hand isn't in it, baby, that's foolishness. It's not going to be understandable to you or why you're trying to do it. Or talking to someone, communicating with someone. Those are the things that we do a lot. And that's the first step to checking yourself. You have to check yourself when it comes to that. You can't always have your point across. Your point always will not make it across. A lot of the times what I have been doing a lot recently is I listen to people. I understand what they're saying, where they're coming from. I try to make sure I validate everybody's feelings. But what I'm not going to do is go back and forth with people that are not understanding the part that I am at in my spiritual journey with God. And that's another thing. Sometimes it's not even they don't have spirit, like how it says in here. This is what I got from it. I think sometimes it even means we're in different spiritual seasons of our lives. I think a lot of the times when people say seasons of life as Christians, they're meaning they're in a different place. You know how seasons change. We have fall, we have winter, we have spring, we have summer, and then they're constantly changing. That is how people's journey with God is. We're always going through different seasons. So sometimes my spiritual season and their spiritual season is different. Sometimes it could even be that my spiritual journey with God, I'm a bit more in depth. I'm a bit more involved with God compared to this person. Maybe they just met God a month ago. So maybe their spiritual journey is not as strong as mine. Maybe they don't hear from God as well as me. They don't know the tools and the steps to take yet. So even talking to them and doing that with them, or the situation that you're about to go into, did I check with God? Did I check myself before moving somewhere that's not in God's hand? So this is what I feel like God meant when he said, check yourself in this verse. He really said, check yourself in this verse. Don't go back and forth or don't do something because I'm not in that. That's not me. It's not spiritual. There's no God written all over. I don't know where that came from. Don't entertain that. And so I feel like it just has a lot to do with that journey. And I kept reading, and something that was really good to me that stuck out was in 1 Corinthians 3:2-3. It said, I gave you milk to drink, not solid food, since you are not ready for it. In fact, you're still not ready because you are too worldly. So because a lot of the times we're so focused on this and that, oh, that just seems like such an amazing opportunity. I'm going to continue to choose to argue with my husband every day or my wife every day. I'm going to continue to choose to act the clown at work or different things like that. It becomes chaotic. Your life becomes chaotic. It becomes crazy because you're not checking yourself. And something that I wrote that kind of makes me laugh when I was doing this, I said, you can't have clowns around and not expect life to be a circus. You can't be going around acting like this, doing that, and not ever once checking yourself spiritually, checking your heart posture. And God says, you know what? You're not even ready for the milk that I'm giving you. I gave you milk, not even solid food. I gave you milk, not solid food, because you're not ready for it. And yet still you're not ready for it because you're too worldly. You're too focused on everything else that's going on in the world, that when I'm trying to get you spiritually ready and trying to move you to places and trying to take you places, you're too focused on everything else. But if you would take the time and focus on my voice and my word and the things that I'm trying to tell you, you could do anything. And that's what God is trying to tell us a lot of the times. We have to silence those voices. And that doesn't necessarily mean that things in life are going to stop. These different things are just not going to happen. No. Your life is still going to be a little chaotic. Sometimes it will even still feel like a circus, even if you don't have clowns around. But you have to check yourself and the things that you are doing. And remember that God is the one that grows you, molds you. He tells you that the fire will refine you. He tells you in 1 Corinthians 3:15. He says, if anyone's work is burned up, he will experience loss, but he himself will be saved, but only as through the fire. And if you think about the fire, how like these little pink things I have right here, these went through fire. And they came out and they were molded and they were shaped and they're beautiful. And so a lot of the times that's what it looks like when we have to check ourselves. And sometimes God has to check you because he got to put you through that fire. Because you forgot that he was the big boss. He's the one that does it all. He's the way maker. He's the miracle worker. He's dad. He's the one that puts his foot down and says, you know what, let's go through this fire real quick. Or even if you have to go through a fire real quick, because you're going to come out and it's going to shape you to be this. I got to mold you into this. I got to fine tune this part. I got to add a different piece to you for this part. And you turn out to be this beautiful person, this beautiful thing that God has put, not a thing, but like you just turn out to be a beautiful being that God has put out in the world for others. And I thought to myself, it all comes down to heart posture. And I know Megan Ashley, if any of you get a chance to check that out, she speaks on heart posture so beautifully. But here's some things that I have really learned from her, what she means by heart posture. It says, I said that when it comes to putting your heart posture, it's putting your best self in position and how you're investing your time with God. How are you spending that time with God? What are you doing with God? What is God telling you to do that you're doing? Having gratitude for the things that God is giving you, making sure that those things are aligned with everything that God is. How are you as a person? It's not about what's in your mind or in my mind. If I do this, I'm going to be blessed. No, it's in my heart. When I give the clothes off my back, I'm not really expecting God to do anything else, because in my heart, I'm just a good person that's trying to live by God and do everything that he says to do. Not in the back of my mind hoping and praying for certain things because I did this and I did that. And I think it's just about the love in your heart. How are you loving? Are you loving my people the way I want you to? And God just really wants us to love. So this little talk episode, check yourself. Something sweet, something short, but just check yourself spiritually. How are you? Are you being too worldly? Are you letting the noises around you take over? Are you checking yourself before every situation? I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll be back with more.